Good morning, everyone. How many of you wake up every day with the desire to be the best in your field? To stand out, excel, and let's be honest, outsmart everyone else? That's a worthy goal. But let me tell you something that might surprise you. The secret to outsmarting others isn't about being better than them. It's about being better for them. Today, I want to share 5 key principles that will not only help you outsmart the competition, but also inspire others to follow your lead. Start with why. Good morning, everyone. Let's start with a question, why are you here today? Not just physically sitting in this room, but here in this moment in your work and your life. You see, most people can answer what they do. I'm a teacher, I'm a marketer, I'm a CEO. Some can even explain how they do it. I use innovative strategies, I focus on teamwork, or I excel at solving problems. But very few can tell you why. Your why isn't about making money, getting promoted, or achieving fame. Those are results. Your why is your purpose, your cause, your belief, the reason you get out of bed every morning and choose to do what you do. Let me tell you a story. In the early days of the Wright brothers, there was another man named Samuel Langley. Langley had everything: funding, the best engineers, and the brightest minds of the time. He was poised to build the world's first flying machine. But Langley had one problem. He wanted to build the plane to make a name for himself. His why was self-serving. Meanwhile, the Wright brothers had no money, no formal education, and no government support. But what they did have was a clear why. They believed in the possibility of human flight and what it could do to change the world. When you look at history, you'll notice that the ones who truly succeed aren't always the smartest or the most talented. They're the ones who lead with a clear sense of purpose. They start with why. The reason why is so powerful is that it connects with people on an emotional level. Science tells us that decisions are made in the part of the brain that controls emotions, not logic. When you communicate your why, you speak to people's hearts, not just their heads. Think about Apple. They don't just sell computers. Their why is about challenging the status quo and empowering individuals to think differently. That belief is what draws people to their brand, even if other products are cheaper or have more features. Here's where it gets exciting. When you lead with your why, you attract the right people, people who believe what you believe. And when you have a team that's united by a shared purpose, there's no limit to what you can achieve. But here's the catch. Finding your why isn't easy. It requires introspection. It demands that you peel back the layers of what and how until you get to the core of what drives you. And once you find it, you have to live it. Because why isn't just a slogan or a mission statement. It's a way of being. So I ask you again, why are you here? When you know the answer to that question, everything changes. Decisions become clearer, relationships become deeper, and success becomes inevitable. The world doesn't need more people who are good at explaining what they do. It needs leaders who inspire us with why they do it. Now, what's your why? Play the infinite game. Good morning, everyone. Let's begin with a simple yet profound truth. Not all games are meant to be won. Some games are meant to be played, and how we approach those games makes all the difference. Most of us have been conditioned to see life as a series of finite games, a collection of moments where there are clear winners and losers, rules to follow, and a definite endpoint. Think about sports, for example. A basketball game lasts 48 minutes, and at the end of it, someone wins and someone loses. But what if I told you that the most important aspects of life, leadership, business, relationships, don't follow those rules? These aren't finite games, they're infinite games. And here's the critical distinction. In an infinite game, the goal isn't to win, it's to keep playing. Let's take a moment to reflect on this. How many of us have been playing finite games in infinite arenas? In business, many companies focus on beating their competitors, hitting quarterly targets, or achieving market dominance. But here's the truth. The game of business doesn't end. Even if you win today, the game continues tomorrow. Finite thinking focuses on immediate outcomes, sales numbers, rankings, or trophies. But infinite thinking is about building something that lasts. It's about resilience, adaptability, and purpose. Take Microsoft and Apple as an example. Years ago, Microsoft invited me to speak at one of their events. Throughout the event, their executives kept talking about how they could beat Apple. A few months later, I spoke at an Apple event, and do you know what they talked about? They didn't once mention Microsoft. They spoke about how to help teachers teach better and students learn better. Apple was playing the infinite game. The problem with finite thinking in an infinite game is that it creates a dangerous cycle. When your goal is to win, you'll cut corners, sacrifice values, and make short-term decisions that might help today but harm tomorrow. Leadership, for example, is an infinite game. There's no finish line, no point where you get to declare, I'm done, I've won at leadership. It's a commitment to continuously improve, inspire, and create an environment where others can thrive. So how do you play the infinite game? It starts with having a just cause, a vision of the future so compelling that it inspires people to give their energy, their time, even their lives to bring it to life. A just cause is more than a goal. It's a reason for being. Think of civil rights leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He didn't fight for civil rights to win against discrimination in his lifetime. His vision, a world where people are judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin, was an infinite cause. It's a vision that continues to inspire people long after he's gone. Playing the infinite game also means building trusting teams. Trust isn't built through one-off actions. It's earned over time through consistency, empathy, and authenticity. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe to speak up, make mistakes, and grow. Without trust, infinite games collapse under the weight of short-term thinking. Another crucial element is the courage to lead. Playing the infinite game requires swimming against the current. It's not easy to focus on the long term when the world rewards short-term wins. It takes courage to say, this is what we stand for, and we're not going to compromise, even if it costs us now. The infinite game is one of resilience, adaptation, and contribution. It's about moving forward, not finishing. It's about focusing on significance, not just success. The question isn't, are you winning? The question is, are you still in the game? Empathy over ego. Good morning, everyone. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly listened to someone? Not to reply, not to prove a point, but simply to understand. In a world that often celebrates ego, titles, power, achievements, it's easy to forget that the foundation of leadership isn't found in how much you know or how loudly you speak. It's found in how deeply you care. The most effective leaders are the ones who prioritize empathy over ego. Now, empathy isn't just a soft skill. It's not about being nice for the sake of it. Empathy is a hard-edged tool for building trust, collaboration, and connection. And trust me, if you want to lead, you'll need trust more than you'll ever need authority. Consider this. When people feel seen, heard, and understood, they show up differently. They bring their best ideas, their full creativity, and their honest selves to the table. On the flip side, when leaders let their ego dictate their actions, they stifle innovation and breed resentment. Let me tell you a story to illustrate this. A while back, I worked with a team at a struggling company. Morale was low, productivity was worse, and the leadership couldn't figure out why. When I spent time with the employees, I noticed something glaring. They didn't feel valued. Leadership was focused on numbers, not people. Employees weren't asked for their input. They were told what to do. They would just do it. But here's the thing. Numbers are a result. People are the reason. When leaders started taking the time to understand their team's frustrations, ideas, and aspirations, when they practiced empathy, everything changed. Productivity improved, collaboration flourished, and the culture transformed, not because the employees worked harder, but because they wanted to. Empathy created a space where people felt valued, and in return, they gave their best. Ego, on the other hand, is a roadblock. It whispers, you're the smartest in the room, you have all the answers, or worse, you don't need anyone else. Ego thrives on being right. Empathy thrives on doing right. But let's be clear, empathy doesn't mean you avoid tough decisions or let people walk all over you. It means you make those decisions with compassion. It means you care enough to listen to others, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you disagree. Empathy isn't just for leaders at the top, it's for all of us. Whether you're managing a team, collaborating with peers, or supporting a friend, empathy is about putting yourself in someone else's shoes, not just to see where they've been, but to understand where they're going. So how do we practice empathy? First, we listen, not to respond, but to understand. This means putting aside distractions and focusing entirely on the person in front of you. Second, we ask questions, not to challenge, but to learn. And third, we acknowledge others' feelings, not by fixing them, but by simply saying, I hear you, and you're not alone. It's important to remember that empathy is a skill, not a trait. It's something you can cultivate with intention and practice. When we lead with empathy, we create cultures where people feel safe to take risks, share ideas, and even fail. We make people feel like they matter. And when people feel like they matter, they show up not just for themselves, but for the mission, for the team, and for the leader who cared enough to care about them. So the next time you're faced with a choice between letting your ego win or leading with empathy, ask yourself this: what kind of leader do I want to be? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? Empathy over ego isn't just good leadership. It's the kind of leadership that lasts. Consistency beats intensity. Good morning, everyone. How often do we hear stories of people who decide to transform their lives overnight? They wake up one day and say, that's it, I'm going to the gym 6 days a week, or from now on, I'm going to read a book every day. It's inspiring, isn't it? But let me ask you this: how often do those intense bursts of effort actually stick? The truth is, transformation doesn't come from intensity, it comes from consistency. Real change, meaningful growth, and lasting impact aren't achieved in a single moment of greatness. They're built brick by brick, day after day, choice after choice. Imagine for a moment that you want to get in shape. You go to the gym for 1 8-hour session, you push yourself harder than ever before, you sweat, you strain, and you give it everything you've got. The next morning, do you wake up with the body of an athlete? Of course not. Now, what if instead of one intense day, you commit to working out for 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week? Over time, the results will come, not because of a single heroic effort, but because of consistent action. This principle doesn't just apply to fitness. It applies to leadership, relationships, and everything that matters in life. The greatest leaders, the strongest teams, and the deepest relationships aren't built in a day. They're built through consistent effort over time. Let me share a story. There was a CEO I worked with who was struggling to build trust with his team. He decided to host an all-hands meeting where he gave an emotional speech about his commitment to improving the company culture. It was powerful, and for a moment, it felt like things were going to change. But here's what happened next. Nothing. After that one speech, he went back to business as usual. No follow-through, no consistent actions to back up his words. And you know what happened? His team became even more disengaged. Why? Because trust isn't built in a single moment of intensity. It's earned through consistent behavior over time. It's showing up day after day, doing the little things that prove you care. Consistency is about discipline, but it's also about humility. It's acknowledging that greatness isn't about grand gestures. It's about the small, unglamorous actions that compound over time. It's saying, I'm in this for the long haul, and being willing to take the slow, steady path instead of chasing quick wins. And here's the thing about consistency. It's not flashy. It doesn't get applause or headlines, but it's the foundation for everything that lasts. Think about it. What makes a marriage work? Is it the grand vacations or anniversary celebrations, or is it the everyday acts of love and respect? The good morning kisses, the shared meals, the simple "how was your day?" The same applies to leadership. Great leaders don't inspire trust through one rousing speech. They do it by consistently showing up for their team, keeping their promises, and leading by example. But let's be honest, consistency isn't easy. There will be days when you don't feel like showing up, when progress feels slow, when it feels like your effort isn't making a difference. That's why consistency requires faith. Not blind faith, but the belief that small actions repeated over time will create meaningful change. Think of planting a tree. You water it, you care for it, and for a long time it looks like nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, roots are growing, and one day that tree will stand tall, not because of a single act, but because of consistent care over time. So let me ask you this. What's one thing you can commit to doing consistently starting today? It doesn't have to be big. In fact, it's better if it's small, because the magic of consistency lies in its simplicity. It's not about being perfect. It's about being persistent. Remember, intensity might spark change, but consistency sustains it. And the things that matter most in life, trust, love, growth, impact, are built not in moments of intensity, but in a lifetime of consistency. Inspire, don't impress. Good morning, everyone. I want to start with a question. When was the last time you tried to impress someone? Maybe it was in a job interview, a meeting, or even a social gathering. You polished your words, highlighted your accomplishments, and presented the best version of yourself. And when you did, how did it feel? Here's the thing about impressing people, it's fleeting. It might make someone notice you for a moment, but it doesn't create a connection. True leadership, true influence, and true legacy come not from impressing people, but from inspiring them. Let me explain the difference. When we try to impress, we focus on ourselves, our skills, our knowledge, our achievements. We're saying, look at me, look at what I've done. But when we inspire, we shift the focus to others. We're saying, look at what's possible. Look at what you can do. Inspiration isn't about making people admire you. It's about making them believe in themselves. And that's a far more powerful and lasting impact. Think about the people who have inspired you in your life. Were they the ones who had the flashiest resumes or the most impressive titles? Or were they the ones who saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself? The ones who made you feel like you were capable of more, who helped you discover your own potential. One of my favorite examples of this is Nelson Mandela. He didn't inspire people by standing on a pedestal and showcasing his accomplishments. He inspired by standing with others, by sharing a vision of equality and freedom that was so powerful. People were willing to risk everything to make it a reality. That's the kind of influence that lasts. But here's the catch. Inspiring others requires vulnerability. It means being honest about your struggles, your failures, and your fears. It means admitting that you don't have all the answers. Because inspiration doesn't come from perfection, it comes from authenticity. When you share your struggles, you give others permission to embrace their own. When you admit your fears, you make it okay for others to face theirs. And when you show your humanity, you remind people that they are capable of greatness, not in spite of their flaws, but because of them. So how do you inspire? It starts with empathy. You have to understand the hopes, dreams, and challenges of the people you want to lead. You have to care enough to see the world through their eyes and speak to their hearts, not just their heads. It also requires a just cause, a vision so compelling that it draws people in and makes them want to be part of something bigger than themselves. Inspiration comes from showing people not just what is, but what could be. And finally, it requires consistency. Inspiration isn't a one-time event. It's not a speech or a campaign or a slogan. It's the way you show up every day, the way you live your values, and the way you lead by example. But here's the paradox. The more you try to impress, the less connection you create. But when you focus on inspiring others, you don't just build connections, you build trust, loyalty, and a legacy that endures. So I challenge you to ask yourself, are you trying to impress, or are you trying to inspire? Are you focused on making people see you, or are you helping them see themselves? Because at the end of the day, the greatest leaders aren't the ones who stand out, they're the ones who lift others up. And that's what inspiration is all about.